My daughter laughed as she called me the help in front of her rich friends. On the night of my only daughter's engagement party, I was the one behind the bar. Not because I wanted to be, but because someone had to keep things running while the real hosts posed for photos under fairy lights. My blazer still smelled like sawdust from the shop, and I thought this must be what love looks like when it outgrows you. But in front of 80 guests, my daughter laughed and called me our 5-star help. Not dad, not thank you, help. Like I was staff. And her fiance, my employee, just stood there, smiling as if I'd finally accepted my place. She didn't know the house she was hosting in wasn't hers yet. I didn't argue. I didn't even look angry. I just folded the cocktail napkin and watched them toast their future. A future built on my silence. But they forgot one thing. The maid still had keys to every door in that house. And the trap was already set. Over 99% of viewers just sat through this story without clicking like or subscribe. Actually, it's easy, just one tap. What time is it in your area? And where are you listening? Richard Hayes had never liked parties that tried too hard to look effortless. And this one, the engagement party of his only daughter, Amelia, was trying very hard indeed. The backyard of their new house in the hills gleamed under soft golden lights strung from the sailcloth tent. The caterers moved like choreographed dancers, all black uniforms and white gloves. The scent of rosemary and roasted lamb floated through the air. Glasses clinked, laughter shimmered, and every single thing seemed placed for the benefit of a camera. Even the napkins had gold monograms, A and B, Amelia and Ben. Richard stood near the outdoor bar, wearing a navy blazer that suddenly felt too heavy. He'd been asked to help out, and somehow that had turned into him manning the bar. At least he could keep busy. That was something he understood: work, rhythm, purpose. He arranged the bottles by height, lined the labels toward the guests, sliced lemons and limes with practiced precision. He didn't belong here, but he could make himself useful. The house was beautiful in the way money could make anything beautiful. White glass panels, imported stone, a view that made you feel slightly smaller. Richard still remembered the day Amelia had shown him the listing. "It's not that expensive for what it is," she'd said, as if she were discussing groceries. He hadn't asked who paid the down payment. He paid enough over the years. He looked up when Ben appeared beside him, all smiles and charm. Ben had that polished ease that came from years of being the cleverest man in the room, or at least believing he was. "Richard, you look great," Ben said, giving his shoulder a friendly pat. "You look like you've been doing this your whole life." It was a kind of compliment that wasn't one. Richard smiled anyway. "Just want everything perfect for you too," he said. "Perfect," Ben echoed, eyes already scanning the guests. That's the word. Then he slipped away, leaving behind the faint scent of expensive cologne and entitlement. Richard watched him cross the lawn to a small cluster of men in suits. Ben gestured as he spoke, his voice rising in confident waves. The others nodded, the way people do when they're deciding who's worth agreeing with. For a moment, Richard saw Amelia on Ben's arm, laughing, her face tilted toward him with pride. She looked radiant, and yet there was something in her laugh, something rehearsed, a note slightly too bright. The evening rolled on, one conversation overlapping another, all of them circling the same small topics. Property prices, private schools, European vacations, the kind of talk that looked expensive but said very little. Richard felt like he was listening to a foreign language he'd once known but forgotten. Then it happened: small, ordinary, cruel. One of Ben's friends, a tall man with a tan that had nothing to do with work, gestured wildly during a story. His wine glass slipped, sending a dark splash across his white shirt. The group gasped as if someone had fainted. "Dad!" Amelia called out across the patio. Her tone was sharp, commanding. "Can you grab some club soda? Quick!" Richard was already moving. Years of fatherhood made him quick to respond. He handed her the bottle, reached for a clean napkin, and began blotting the stain on the man's shirt. The wine bled slowly into the white fabric, turning it pink like a wound spreading. And then Amelia laughed, bright, tinkling, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Oh, Dad, you're a lifesaver," she said. "Everyone, this is my dad, Richard. He's basically our 5-star help for the evening. Aren't you, Dad?" The laughter around her came instantly, polite but real. Ben didn't laugh, he just smiled. That small, knowing smile that said everything. He didn't say a word in her defense. He didn't have to. His silence was permission. Richard's hand froze mid-motion. The napkin hung in the air. There were a dozen ways he could have responded. A joke, a glare, a quiet correction. Instead, he finished cleaning the man's shirt, handed over the napkin, and said simply, "Club soda usually does the trick." His voice was even unshaken. Then he stepped away. He walked past the tent, down the small stone path toward the far end of the garden, where the lights didn't quite reach. From there, he could see the party framed perfectly. Amelia shining under the fairy lights, Ben with his hand on her back, guests smiling, glasses raised. The picture of perfection. And yet, it was cracked. He could see it now. The crack wasn't in the lights, or the decor, or the champagne tower. It was in the way Amelia looked at him only when others were watching. It was in the way Ben's politeness never reached his eyes. Richard looked down at his hands. Calloused, strong, marked by decades of work. He'd built things, real things, homes that stood through storms, furniture that outlasted marriages. His hands had purpose, but tonight they'd been treated like the hands of a servant. He exhaled, slow and steady. The hurt settled somewhere deeper than anger could reach. He thought of his wife, her laughter, her patience, the way she believed that love could fix anything. He thought of Amelia at 6, running through the yard in pigtails, shouting, "Catch me, Daddy!" That girl was gone, replaced by someone polished and brittle. He didn't feel fury. He felt something colder. This wasn't just a daughter making a mistake. This was a pattern, a choice. And choices have consequences. He looked back once more toward the glow of the party, the laughter, the clinking glasses, the perfect, hollow performance, and then turned toward the dark. The night air was cool against his face, clean and honest. For the first time all evening, he felt something close to peace. Because now, finally, he understood what had broken. And he knew exactly how to fix it. Richard didn't sleep well that night. Even with the windows cracked open and the scent of wet lilacs drifting in, sleep hovered just out of reach, like a memory you could almost name. He replayed the party over and over in his mind. Amelia's voice, Ben's laugh, the champagne tower, the way people looked through him, not at him. By morning, something inside him had changed. Not anger, not yet, but a shift, like a door closing, quietly from the inside. He showed up at Amelia's apartment the next evening without warning. He brought her favorite carrot cake, the one from that little place on Main they used to go after piano recitals. She answered the door barefoot, phone to her ear, white wine in hand. "Dad?" Her voice lifted at the end like a question. "Just passing by," he said. "Thought I dropped something off." She smiled distractedly and covered the phone. "I'm on a call with Ben's mom, but come in, just 2 minutes." All the Revere. Richard stepped inside. The place was tastefully modern, all soft neutrals and matte black fixtures. No trace of who Amelia used to be. No photos, no fridge magnets, not even the clay handprint he helped her make in 2nd grade. He waited. 2 minutes became 10, then 15. When she finally came back, her smile was polished and hollow. "Sorry, wedding stuff. You know how it is?" "I wouldn't," he said gently. "No one ever really talked about our wedding after." "Hi?" Amelia froze for half a second. "Right. Mom never liked talking about the past much. She didn't have to. She built it into every room." He handed her the cake. She took it automatically, like someone accepting a dry cleaning receipt. They sat on the couch. "So, how's everything?" she asked, tucking her legs under her. "Ben said the appraisal on your house went really well. He's looking into some equity options." Richard's fingers curled. "Appraisal?" "Yeah, he didn't mention it. Just checking the value, nothing formal. It's a beautiful property. Some people say it's wasted on retirees." There was that word again. Retiree. As if his usefulness had an expiration date. Richard nodded slowly. Then he leaned forward. "You know, I've been thinking," he said. "You and Ben are planning a wedding, buying property, starting a life. I'm just one man in the big house. Doesn't make a lot of sense anymore." And their beat Wang. Amelia perked up, cautious optimism brightening her face. Well, yeah, I've always thought it was too much for you. That house is a lot to maintain. It is, he agreed. So I thought, maybe it's time to pass things down, make things official. She blinked. Wait, are you saying? I'm going to the bank this week, he said, to talk about restructuring some ownership documents, maybe even adding a name. Her mouth opened, then closed. She tried to hide the smile but couldn't. Oh, Dad, wow, that means a lot. He smiled back, but only with his mouth. He left half an hour later. Amelia hugged him at the door, called him the best dad ever, and promised to tell Ben. She even offered to loop him in on the logistics later. Richard nodded, but in his mind, the logistics were already handled. The very next morning, he sat down with Miss Patel at the law firm downtown. She was sharp, discreet, and had known his wife. She always had a quiet kind of brilliance, Miss Patel said softly, pouring him tea. Built her life like a blueprint. Everything meant something. Richard nodded. She kept everything. Copies, letters, even the little notes we wrote each other in college. And your current concern? I want to draft a new will, he said. Quietly. No updates on file they can see. No alerts. Miss Patel raised an eyebrow. Are you expecting trouble? I'm expecting assumptions, Richard said. And I want to stay 3 steps ahead of them. He didn't tell her about the joke, or the carpet, or the way his daughter handed him over for a laugh, but Miss Patel saw enough in his face. By the time he left, a draft was in motion. Back at home, Richard stood in the living room for a long time. He looked at the framed photo over the mantel. Amelia at 9, gap-toothed, holding a hammer next to him on the project site. He picked it up, dusted the glass with his sleeve, then turned it face down. In the quiet, he said aloud, almost surprised by the sound of his own voice. Let's see what they really think I'm worth when they can't touch a thing. Galver Ann. Alver Galver Ann. Saturday began with a kind of gray light that makes the house feel like it's holding its breath. I climbed the narrow attic stairs with a mug of coffee, and my old habit of narrating silently boards creak, window hums, dust floats like a slow parade. The boxes were still labeled in my wife's handwriting. Amelia Art, Amelia School, Photos Summer. I slit the tape on one with a butter knife and lifted out construction paper cards that smelled faintly of Elmer's and thyme. Dad, you are my hero. In purple marker, the Y in my, a heroic swoop. A photo of Amelia with missing teeth and dirt on her knees, holding up a caterpillar like an offering. A flattened ribbon from a field day. I sat cross-legged on the wooden floor and let each thing do what it came to do. Tug, sting, stitch. The girl in these pictures had once fallen asleep in the back seat, clutching a library book and half-eaten apple. The woman on the lawn last night had laughed at me for an audience. My phone buzzed near my knee. A notification from an app I mostly ignore. Amelia's face filled the screen, brighter than the attic bulb. Weekend mode, the caption said. A sun emoji, a champagne emoji. Swipe, a deck shot on a borrowed yacht, the city shoulder rolling into the water behind them. Ben in sunglasses pointing at nothing. Amelia wrapped in a white sweater that looked expensive and cold. Swipe, a plate of oysters, the lemon rinds curled like commas. Swipe, a wrist close-up, a new watch with more dials than cockpit. The comments came in like hail. Gorgeous. Goals. So deserved. Parallel lives make an ugly grid if you stare too long. I put the phone face down. It buzzed again anyway. By afternoon, the house had that empty Saturday acoustics refrigerator ticking, the dryer thumping a single button, the neighbor's leaf blower sawing the same patch of air. I took my wife's recipe card from the drawer, ran my thumb over her note, don't skimp on lemon zest, and set ribs to marinate out of muscle memory. At 6:15 I dialed. The call went straight to voicemail. Amelia, I said after the tone, keeping my voice even. Classroom calm. It's Dad. Just wanted to see if you guys wanted to come over for dinner Sunday. I'm making your favorite ribs. I paused long enough for breathing, not for pleading. Let me know. And that almost. For a while, I washed the attic dust from my hands and watched the marinade shine in the bowl like a promise no one asked for. The reply pinged at 9:43 p.m., a blue bubble that could have been generated by a machine. Sorry, Dad. Super busy. Can't make it. Talk next week. No period. No heart. An efficient dismissal disguised as cheer. On their feet, Night kept opening like a flower. A corner booth at the restaurant whose name everyone pronounces wrong. A candle held in front of a molten chocolate cake. A blurry selfie on a dock under string lights. In one, Ben's palm is on the small of her back. In another, her mouth is open in a laugh that looks like relief. Grief is a weather system that moves through a house even when the windows are shut. It visited each room politely, sat on the edge of the bed, leaned against the kitchen counter, stood in the doorway of my office with its hands in its pockets. I let it. I didn't argue with it or perform for it. I stacked the cards back in their box and carried them downstairs like a priest carrying something breakable. Sunday, I made the bed with hotel corners, the way my wife used to half tease me for, and stripped the house of its weekend slack. I vacuumed under the sofa, wiped the fingerprints from the stainless steel, lined up the spines on the bookshelf because order is a kind of prayer. I took the ribs out of the refrigerator and slid them into the freezer, where they could sleep through other weekend. At noon, I went to the barber on the corner who remembers names. "Tighten it up?" he asked, already understanding. "Tighten it up," I said. The cape rustled. Hair felt like punctuation. Back home, I pressed my best suit because fabric listens when you take it seriously. Navy, the one from the photo of us at the university endowment ceremony. When the dean used the word legacy as if it were a blessing and not a warning. I polished shoes until I could see a sensible, unhurried version of my face in them. I chose a tie my wife had liked midnight with a single thin stripe, and laid everything out with the patient satisfaction of someone packing for a trip he's already mapped. Across town or on the bay, or in a lobby where the marble thinks highly of itself, Amelia and Ben kept performing pleasure. "Testing the waters," he captioned the video. "The yacht's wake cutting a white wound in the blue. Branch of champions," she wrote under a photo of mimosas, the flutes sweating like athletes. I didn't comment, didn't like, didn't mute. The feed scrolled itself while I ironed the corners of Monday. By evening, the house was immaculate and almost unbearably quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own lungs. I went into my office and set Ben's file in the center of the desk. Teresa had been thorough. Original contract, amendments, performance reviews, stray emails printed and highlighted, a tidy paper road from ambition to arrogance. I didn't read a word. The evidence was no longer the point. The ritual was, I turned the desk lamp on and then off. I opened the window an inch to let in the night and the faint, sane sound of a distant train. Saturday. The chair knew me. The room did what good rooms do. It held without commentary. I considered calling again and didn't. Mercy sometimes looks like silence. Somewhere, a final post went up. A boomerang of Amelia flicking her hair in the wind, the watch catching late sun, the city performing a miracle behind them. Hearts bloomed under it by the hundreds. I put my phone on the lowest drawer of the desk and closed it gently. The click was small and absolute. Terrifying peace is not fireworks or triumph. It is the still surface of a lake at night when you realize you know exactly where the shore is and you are not lost. I sat with that. The house exhaled. The weekend, like a long-held note, resolved. Monday at 9 was no longer a time on a calendar. It was a place I would arrive on purpose, with my suit pressed and my mind emptied of everything but the task. I turned off the light and left the office door open. Let the quiet move where it wanted. Let the rib sleep. Let the train go wherever trains go. And let the file wait, patient as the tide. It was Wednesday when the phone rang. Not the landline, Amelia never called that anymore, but Richard's cell phone, which usually sat untouched on the kitchen counter, next to the coffee grinder and his reading glasses. He didn't answer it right away. He was sanding the edge of a cedar planter box in the garage, letting the rasp of wood calm him. The smell of sawdust and lemon oil had always steadied him in ways therapy never could. By the time he checked the missed call, Amelia had already left a voicemail. "Hi, Dad. So Ben and I were wondering if we could come by this weekend. Maybe have dinner. Just the three of us. The three of us, not just me. Not you and me. The three of us." Richard didn't call back. He didn't have to. Instead, he called Mr. Becker. Mr. Becker was a retired friend from the local credit union. The kind of man who wore corduroy blazers in October and still balanced his checkbook with a fountain pen. Discreet, loyal, and good with numbers. I need you to print something for me, Richard said. 2 copies. He explained the situation in careful, calm detail, an addendum to the will. It stated that all assets, real estate, accounts, even personal valuables were to be distributed to a charitable trust, effective only if the original will was tampered with in any way or if coercion could be proven. Mr. Becker didn't ask why. He just said, I'll have it notarized by Friday. On Saturday, Richard set the table with surgical precision. Amelia always said he'd missed his calling as a maitre d'. He used the bone china, the linen napkins from Ireland, the same crystal glasses they'd brought back from the anniversary trip to Charleston. The dinner smelled like memory rosemary, chicken, buttered carrots, and his wife's cornbread recipe with just a touch of honey. When the doorbell rang, he took a deep breath and opened it. Ben was wearing a navy blazer, too tight in the shoulders, and smiled with just a bit too much teeth. Evening, sir. Ben. Amelia looked tired. Beautiful, polished, but tired. She leaned in to kiss her father on the cheek. This smells amazing. It's your mother's recipe, he said. Thought you'd appreciate that. They Saturday, they ate, they chatted about nothing, and then, over dessert, Richard stood up. I have something to share, he said. He placed a slim envelope on the table, white, unmarked. Amelia glanced at it, then at him. What is this? I've made some changes to the will, he said plainly. Nothing major, just a clarification of intent. Ben blinked. Oh? Just wanted you both to hear it from me directly, rather than, after. He opened the envelope, pulled out the first document, and read. Amelia's face went still. Ben cleared his throat. You're donating everything? I don't understand. What about your family? Richard looked directly at him. My family understands the value of legacy, Ben. Not just the dollar amount attached to it. Amelia sat frozen, a fork halfway to her mouth. Dad, you don't have to. This feels like punishment. No, Amelia, Richard said quietly. It's protection. Ben's voice cracked with polite indignation. It almost sounds like you think we're trying to, steal from you? Richard didn't answer right away. Instead, he took out the second sheet. This is the part I want you to sign, he said, sliding the paper toward Ben. It simply states that you're aware of the legal structure and that you have no claim to contest it. Amelia reached for the paper, but Ben beat her to it. He scanned the page, and for the first time all evening, his charm cracked. I like to show this to a lawyer before signing anything. Richard nodded. That's fair. But just know, if you attempt to change or contest anything, the default plan goes into effect. No questions, no court battles, just automatic transfer to the trust. Ben didn't reply. Amelia set her glass down carefully. You planned all this. Yes, Richard said, meeting her eyes. And I'm not ashamed of that. You see, I finally stopped being polite. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was revealing. Ben excused himself a few minutes later, claiming a headache. Amelia lingered in the doorway. Dad, she said softly, this hurts. I know, Richard replied. That's what boundaries feel like when you've never had to face them before. She didn't cry. Not yet. But her lower lip trembled. Is this the end of everything? No, he said gently. It's the beginning. But only if you want it to be. Ben didn't say much on the drive home. He gripped the steering wheel like it had insulted him, knuckles white, eyes fixed dead ahead. Amelia sat beside him, arms folded, the silence between them growing heavier with every mile. When they got back to the apartment, the one Richard had helped them lease, but now paid for entirely, Ben tossed his keys onto the marble island and turned on her like a sudden storm. You knew, he snapped. Amelia blinked. Knew what? That he was going to pull this stunt. She exhaled. It wasn't a stunt. It was a will. His will. No, Ben growled. It was a show. That whole dinner? That was theater. Do you know how insane he sounds, setting up some trap like that? And you just sat there. What was I supposed to do? She shot back. Scream? Flip the table? He made a decision. And frankly, after everything we've what? Ben stepped closer, towering over her, built, Amelia didn't flinch. She wasn't the girl who used to shrink under heat. No, she said coldly. After everything we tried to control. Ben scoffed. So that's it? You're on his side now? There aren't sides, Ben. There's just truth. And maybe he's not as senile as we thought. Ben laughed a harsh, bitter sound. Of course, because dear old dad is always right. Perfect little Richard Hayes, the noble widower, the grieving carpenter, with his homemade casseroles and loyalty points. She winced at the mockery. Don't do that. Don't reduce him, because you can't manipulate him. Ben fell quiet. For the first time, his expression flickered. Not rage, not charm, panic. Amelia could see it now, the deepening creases around his mouth. The way he pressed his lips together to keep from lashing out. He was unraveling because Richard hadn't just closed the door. He'd locked it, and Ben had no key. The next week was a quiet storm. Ben made calls behind closed doors. Amelia overheard phrases she wished she hadn't. Undue influence, capacity hearing, preemptive contest. One morning, she found him hunched over the kitchen table, a spreadsheet open, muttering to himself. We can't let this stand. You understand that, right? Amelia stood in the doorway, her coffee cooling in her hand. You mean we can't let him have autonomy? Ben looked up. I mean, we can't let him throw everything away. Amelia shook her head. He's not throwing it away. He's choosing what matters to him. Ben stood. And what about what matters to us? She stared at him. You mean what matters to you? That was the first crack. A few days later, she visited Richard. Not to apologize. Not yet. But to observe. To understand. She found him in the garden, repotting tulips. He looked up, sweat on his brow, dirt on his knuckles, and smiled faintly. Didn't expect you. I needed air, she said. They sat on the back steps. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the lawn. Ben's spiraling, she admitted. I know. You're calm about that. I've been through worse, Richard said. Panic looks louder than it feels. They were quiet for a while. Then Amelia asked, why did you do it? The addendum? Richard wiped his hands on a rag. Because I love you, he said, but I stopped trusting you. The words stung. But, he added, I'd like to again. I really would. She looked away. You know, he's talking about legal options. I'm aware. You're not scared? I've already lived the worst moment of my life, Amelia. Losing your mother was the bottom. Everything after that is just management. She nodded, eyes glassy. I miss her too, she said. I know. Ben's spiral deepened. One evening, Amelia came home to find a manila folder open on the kitchen counter. Inside were court forms. The word conservatorship printed at the top, in bold. You're filing this? She whispered. Ben stepped out of the bedroom, tie loosened, eyes bloodshot. I told you I won't let him destroy what's ours. It's not ours, she said, voice rising. It's his house, his money, his legacy. And he's clearly unfit. No, she cut in. You're the one who's unfit. He froze. Unfit to lead. Unfit to love without strings. You're so desperate for control, you've forgotten how to be decent. He stepped closer. Are you choosing him over me? She didn't blink. I'm choosing right over wrong. The next day, she called her father. Can I come over? He didn't ask questions, just said, the porch light's on. When she arrived, he had already brewed her favorite tea chamomile with a hint of vanilla. She sat down across from him, hands shaking. I didn't know he was going to go that far. I believe you. I'm scared, she admitted. That makes two of us, he said, smiling softly. She looked at him for a long time, then said the thing that scared her most. I think I've been pretending for years. Pretending I'm stronger than I am. Pretending Ben was the answer. Richard reached across the table and took her hand. The fact that you can say that now, that's strength, Amelia. That's who your mother raised. She wept for all the lost time, all the buried guilt, all the illusions shattered. The fall began with a beep. On Tuesday afternoon, under the soft flattery of boutique lighting, Amelia handed over a black card for a dress she didn't need but suddenly believed would solve something. The sales associate smiled mechanically, slid the card, and the machine answered with a small, insolent chirp. Declined. The smile faltered. The voice became careful. Do you have another method of payment, Miss Lane? Amelia laughed as if the machine had told a joke. There must be a mistake, she said, already texting Ben. The second card failed too. The associate's eyes did that polite, soft thing people do when they're watching someone step into a hole. If you like, we can hold it for 48 hours. Outside, the sidewalk seemed to tilt. Her phone pinged again, this time from the bank. Account changes effective immediately. Please contact your trustee. She didn't. Across town, Ben was in the garage taking a photo of the company car's minor scrape when the email landed. Fleet notice, vehicle repossession scheduled. He stared at the subject line until the words lost meaning. He called the number at the bottom. A cheerful woman explained policies he had helped write. We'll need the keys accessible, she said. Tomorrow by 5. That night in the villa, the spaces felt too big for their voices. The kitchen island was a continent. The living room, an echo chamber. Dad notices began arriving with the day's catalogs, thin white envelopes announcing balances with the same breezy confidence as summer linens. Ben tossed a stack onto the marble. Isn't that great, Amelia? Dad's jealous. That's all you could think of? You turned a work problem into a family war. She didn't look up. Oh, so this is my fault? Who stood there like a coward when your boss, my father, was humiliated? Who insisted we live a life we couldn't afford because it photographed well? I had a career, he snapped. I was on the rise. You ruined it with your stupid insecurities. She laughed, short and serrated. Your career? That career was given to you by my father. You threw it away because you couldn't open your mouth to protect him. Silence stretched. The fridge hummed. Somewhere a neighbor's dog barked and was shushed. The social weather changed as quickly as the financial. Amelia called her best friend to vent over lunch voicemail. A text arrived an hour later. So slammed this week. Rain check? The rain never checked. At the club, Ben walked across the putting green toward a man who used to slap his back like a campaign stop. The man saw him, paused for a tiny, telling heartbeat, then turned his head and began a new conversation with no one in particular. The green looked immense. Ben felt 2 inches tall and oddly weightless. Later, a mutual acquaintance phoned Richard. I saw him at the club yesterday, the friend said. He looked like a ghost, Richard. No one wanted to go near him. Word spread fast. One and say, one and say, I won. The charity gala invitation that had lived on the refrigerator like a trophy arrived in email form with a correction. Due to capacity, we're unable to accommodate additional guests this year. It had accommodated them every year. Amelia reread the sentence until it blurred. That evening, the argument resumed, meaner around the edges. You don't know how to survive without applause, she said, eyes bright and glassy. You can't even stand a room that doesn't rotate toward you. I do one. And you don't know who you are without a man to introduce you, he said. First your father, then me. It should have ended there, with a cruelty they would later pretend not to remember. But they kept talking, smaller and uglier. They took turns slamming cabinet doors as if punctuation might fix the grammar of their lives. By Thursday, the villa had been transformed into a staging area for retreat. Realtor cars sat in a tidy fan on the counter. The flowers looked embarrassed in their crystal. They ate at the island like strangers. In a model home, boxed salads, paper napkins, the silverware too heavy for such small food. They stopped speaking by accident and then discovered the relief of it. The quiet between them was not peace. It was pressure, like changing the weather you can feel in your teeth. The house, stripped of its fabulousness, revealed its plain bones. The rooms no longer performed. They simply held two people who had mistaken performance for love. When the lights went off that night, there were no posts to polish the darkness, no yachts, no oysters, no clever captions. Just a long, stubborn silence sitting between them on the bed, staring back, unblinking. A week after the storm, the house sounded too honest. No music, no television, just the refrigerator's steady vow to keep going. Richard moved through rooms that had learned his gate study to kitchen to the chair by the window where the afternoon light used to find his wife. The quiet didn't soothe. It pressed. He had wanted consequences, not this particular echo of them. He opened the hall closet, looking for nothing in particular, and found everything that mattered: an old shoebox with Amelia's handwriting on the lid. Inside, a plastic tiara missing 2 jewels, a friendship bracelet stiff with age, a dented bell from the bike he taught her to ride. He thumbed the bell. It made a small, tinny sound that collapsed time. In the memory, she was 7 and furious at gravity, helmet askew, knees already bruised. "Don't let go," she said without looking back. "I won't," he'd promised, running alongside until his breath burned. When he finally did release, she sailed forward, certain he was still there. Certain certainty was enough. It occurred to him painfully that belief had been their family currency. Maybe he had spent it too freely. By Thursday, he was in the paneled office of Mr. Davis, the senior partner at the firm, a man who dressed like courtrooms were weather you prepared for. Even the coffee tasted formal. Davis clicked the pen open, a small, crisp sound. "The paperwork is complete," Davis began. "Beneficiaries and trust revisions filed. They've listed the house. Ben's had 2 interviews. Both stalled after reference checks. Word's out, Richard. As for Amelia, she sold a bracelet and a pair of earrings this week. It looks like she's managing the bills for now." Richard looked past the window at a strip of winter sky, a color with no name. "I don't want him sleeping on the street, Davis," he said, voice low. "I just want him to understand. It's beginning to make sense," Davis said gently. "Sometimes the only way people look up is when they've hit bottom." Richard winced at the word. Bottoms in real life didn't sound like chapter breaks. They sounded like collection calls and the clink of a pawnshop door. "Make sure creditors don't corner them illegally," he said. "If anyone tries to strong arm, I want to know." And he hesitated. "Pride is a stubborn animal. Keep an eye on Amelia, quietly. Just make sure she's safe." "This is all B.F. ever." Davis nodded, the kind of nod lawyers use when they've heard the thing beneath the words. Understood. That night, sleep wandered the house and forgot his address. He walked the upstairs hall in socks, passing the door that had once been a kingdom of posters and glitter. He pushed it open. The room still smelled faintly of a citrus shampoo that had promised confidence. The bulletin board held a crooked Polaroid of a girl with missing teeth and a dog now long gone. He sat on the edge of the made bed and felt the exact weight of what he'd cut away. Justice had shape and edges. Love was what bled around it. He was not a gloating man. He did not rehearse victories. He felt tired clear through the way you feel after carrying something heavy for too long, even if you were the one who chose to lift it. He had taught 1,000 young people that choices have consequences. He hadn't taught his daughter that consequences could be merciful and still be consequences. At dawn, when the house was pale with beginning, he called Davis again. "One more thing," he said. "If she needs medical care, if anything looks unsafe, authorize help. Anonymous, if possible." "I'll arrange it," Davis said. "And I'll report only what you ask for." "Good," Richard answered, relieved by the boundaries. He set the phone down and went to the kitchen. He measured coffee the way his wife had, leveled with a butter knife. Outside, the street woke cautiously, trash, truck, a runner, a dog tugging its person toward the day. He stood at the window with a mug warming his hands and accepted that being a father at this late hour looked like this. Not rescuing, not punishing, but watching. Watchful as guardrail. Watchful as weather, not to enjoy the fall, but to make sure the ground didn't kill her when she finally felt it. The rental's walls were the color of old oatmeal, and the windows stuck half open as if even air had lost interest. The kitchen was more of a corner to cabinets, a stove that listed to one side like a tire ship, a single overhead bulb that hummed. They ate standing up the first few nights, plastic forks against takeout cartons, and discovered that silence sounded different without a view. Gone were the soft rugs and the flattering lamps. Gone the refrigerator covered in shiny invitations that had once felt like passports. In their place, 3 mismatched plates from a thrift store, a folding table that pinched your fingers if you forgot where to hold it, and a stack of boxes labeled in Amelia's sharp handwriting, "Kitchen Maybe books? Misc divided by later, like questions you could tape shut. That afternoon, Amelia was unpacking a shoebox when her fingers found velvet. The necklace lay coiled like a slept-in secret. Her mother's diamonds, small and sensible, each stone catching the dull light and making something better of it. She pressed it to her palm and, for a moment, the apartment softened. She saw her mother's face on the warm June night, powder and perfume, and the quiet way she'd fastened the clasp around Amelia's throat. You don't need jewels to be seen, her mother had teased, but it's good to remember where you come from. The door opened. Ben set down a canvas duffel with the care of a man placing evidence. We need cash, he said by way of hello. Rent's due. The car's gone. I've called everyone twice. Amelia slid the necklace back into the velvet. I'll handle it. With what? He gestured around as if the walls owed him an apology. His eyes fell to the box, to her hand. What is that? Nothing, she said too quickly. He moved closer. Amelia. She lifted the necklace just enough for it to breathe. My mother's, she said. It's all I have left. He didn't blink. We have to sell it. It's the last money we'll get. No. Her voice surprised her, small but anchored. This is not a thing. It's her. He reached, not roughly at first, just the thoughtless reach of a man who has always been allowed. Don't be silly. Your mother is dead. She'd rather you pay rent than worship a piece of metal. Amelia stepped back, the box scraping the table. You don't understand anything. It's a dueling nest. Ben's mouth hardened into a line she didn't recognize. Or perhaps she did and had chosen, for a long time, not to. No, you don't understand. The heat came up in his face all at once. You bet on the wrong horse. You thought I was brilliant, from the right people, on the way up. Turns out you're just the daughter of a cocky old carpenter, and you're exactly as stupid as him. The word carpenter landed between them like something dirty. Amelia felt the air leave her. She clutched the velvet to her chest the way a child clutches a blanket. I'm done, Ben said, louder now, as if volume could change history. Done with your dramatics, with your father's shadow, with this whole tragic, broke princess act. He let go of the edge of the table and the folding legs shuddered, almost gave. He grabbed the duffel, slung it over his shoulder, and walked to the door. He didn't look back. The slam rattled the picture hooks of someone else's life. For a long time, Amelia stood exactly where he left her, as if moving would confirm the emptiness. The apartment settled, small sounds asserting themselves. The upstairs neighbor's television laugh track, a bus sighing at the corner, water ticking the pipes. She slid down the cabinet to the floor, the vinyl cool through her jeans, and opened her palm. The necklace lay there, patient. It was not magic. It couldn't reverse a single bad choice, but it was proof of a woman who had loved her without an audience, of a house that had smelled of lemon oil and Sunday dinners, of a father with cracked hands who had built things that lasted. Amelia curled around it and cried the hoarded, private way people cry when there is no one left to perform for. Outside, evening pressed its forehead to the glass. Inside, the apartment accepted the sound and then, as all rooms eventually do, went quiet again. For 3 days, the apartment ripened into a kind of quiet rot. Dishes with dried sauce, a half-eaten apple browning on the counter, an open box breathing dust. Amelia stayed mostly in bed, the blinds pulled to a permanent dusk. When she stood, the room tipped. When she lay down, her thoughts did. Her phone went from hot with messages to cool as a stone. No one called now except numbers that threatened consequences in pleasant voices. On the 4th morning, the light found the table and, on it, the necklace. The diamonds were small, tidy, practical, her mother's taste. They caught what little brightness there was and held it like good manners. Amelia sat up, swung her legs over the side of the bed, and touched the velvet. The memory rose with embarrassing clarity. Her mother behind her, the soft click of a clasp, an offhand benediction. When you fall, pick yourself up. That's the only trick there is. She showered, washed her hair twice to chase the apartment smell, and put on the plainest clothes she owned. She opened her laptop and typed jobs near me, then retail, then anything. The first application was too long. The second asked for references she didn't want to risk. The third thanked her for her interest and promised to review her fit. She walked to 3 stores and a supermarket and said the same sentence in different tones. Are you hiring? And was told, kindly and not, to try online. At the fourth place, a cafe that smelled of burnt sugar and ambition, the manager looked at her for a long moment and said, can you start tomorrow? Lunch shift. It's busy. She nodded and felt something unclench. It wasn't triumph. It was permission. The cafe was narrow, all reclaimed wood and chalkboard optimism. Her apron was stiff the first day and soft by the third. She learned the rhythm of the espresso machine, the geography of pastry crumbs, the names of regulars who wanted to be known. Her feet hurt by 2 each afternoon in a precise, pulsing way. When she wiped tables, she did it the way her father said it would. Even, edge to edge, no shortcuts. She did not think of him, and she thought of him constantly. On Friday, an old acquaintance walked in friend of a friend, glossy hair, coat that swung like a curtain call. Their eyes met. The woman's face performed a small, efficient sequence. Surprise, calculation, the clean lift of contempt. She turned without speaking and left as if she had remembered a prior engagement. Amelia kept her back straight, finished the order she was taking, and then took one breath too many, eyes burning. The milk pitcher hissed. The register chimed. No one applauded, which felt like a mercy. At closing, she pocketed tips that smelled of sugar and hands, swept under chairs, and walked home with her shoulders square. The city did not mind that she had changed. It kept moving. That night, she sat at a cheap table with a pen that wrote immediately no coaxing and a stack of loose paper. She dated the top corner, then waited for language to catch up to intention. The first sentence arrived like a confession. Dad, she wrote, I'm not writing for money or help. I'm writing because I said things to you that weren't just untrue. They were unkind, and I am ashamed of them. She told him the facts in small, honest measures. The apartment, the job, the morning she couldn't get up, the acquaintance who walked out, and the way that felt like a fair tax. She didn't mention Ben by name until she had to. When she did, it was without theater. You were right about him. You were also right about me. I kept performing a life and forgot how to live one. Today I wiped tables and it felt like the first honest thing I've done in years. She paused, listening to the apartment's new sounds, the hum of the old fridge, the couple next door arguing about nothing, a siren sawing the night. The words at the end were stubborn and simple. I'm sorry, Dad. I was wrong. She signed just her name, no flourish, folded the pages, and slid them into an envelope. She addressed it with care, the way she used to label school projects. In the morning, she would walk it to a blue mailbox and trust an ordinary system to carry it. Tonight, she set it by the door, turned off the light, and lay down in a room that was still small but not empty. Over 99% of viewers just sat through the story without clicking like or subscribe. Actually, it's easy, just one tap. What time is it in your area, and where are you listening? The envelope was soft to the touch. Richard had almost missed it, tucked between the water bill and the hardware catalog he hadn't asked for. There was no return address, just his name handwritten in a slanted script he hadn't seen in years. He stood by the kitchen counter a long time, holding the letter but not opening it. The house was quiet. Outside, the late afternoon sun warmed the garden in golden sheets. A breeze stirred the lavender he and Eleanor had planted one spring after she beat cancer the first time. Eventually, he opened it. The letter was long, 4 pages, handwritten, no embellishments, no manipulation, just the facts. Amelia had lost the condo. Ben had left. She'd found work at a small cafe. She apologized not with excuses or justifications, but with phrases that Richard hadn't realized he needed to hear. I see it now, Dad. What you were trying to teach me. That dignity doesn't come from what we wear or what we drive, but how we live when no one's watching. He read the letter twice, then a third time. When the sun finally dipped behind the hedge, Richard folded the pages with steady hands. He didn't cry. He didn't smile. But he placed the letter on the dining table beside Eleanor's photo and whispered, "You'd know what to do." The next morning, Richard drove to the cemetery. He hadn't planned to speak aloud, but the words came easily once he stood before Eleanor's name etched into the granite. "She wrote," he said. "She says she's working now, Some little coffee shop. He paused. She said she's sorry. A gust of wind moved the dry leaves at his feet. Richard looked around, just one man in an old flannel shirt, talking to the only woman who'd ever known how deep he could love or how long he could stay angry. I don't know if I believe her yet, he admitted. But she said she's earning every penny herself. No shortcuts, no ask for money, just truth. He was silent a moment longer, then tapped his fingers against his thigh. What would you do? The answer didn't come in words, but in memory. The night Amelia was born, screaming and red and furious with the world, Eleanor had whispered, she's going to need both of us. Soft and strong. Richard brushed dust from the stone, then got back in the truck. The cafe was on a quiet corner, nestled between the florist and the consignment shop with 50% off fall jacket signs in the window. Richard parked across the street and waited, engine idling, hands resting at 10 and 2. He watched the door open. Customers came and went. None of them looked like his daughter. Then he saw her. Hair pulled back, plain black t-shirt, a navy apron with the cafe's logo stitched in fading thread. She held a tray in one hand, a cloth in the other. He watched her wipe tables with quiet diligence, offer a tired smile to a customer, then disappear behind the counter again. Richard turned off the engine, crossed the street, pushed open the door. The scent of coffee and cinnamon bread hit him first. The clink of cups, low jazz from a speaker in the corner. Amelia emerged from the back with a pitcher of cream in hand. She froze. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she walked over, slowly, the cream sloshing slightly in the glass. Her voice wavered. Dad, I got your letter, he said. Silence fell between them, thick and careful. How's the job? He asked, nodding to the counter behind her. Amelia blinked, then gave a soft, almost incredulous laugh. Hard, she said. I had blisters for the first week, burned my hand on the espresso machine on day 3, got yelled at for giving the wrong change. Her voice lowered, but it's honest. I earned every penny, no shortcuts. Richard looked at her, really looked. Her skin had lost that glassy, well-moisturized sheen. Her eyes were tired, but they held something steadier than defiance now, maybe even humility. Your mother will be proud of that, he said, after a long pause. Amelia's lips trembled. She bit down on them and nodded. I don't expect you to forget, she said. I know I heard you, and Mom, and myself too. I let all the wrong things define me. Richard sat down at a small table by the window. She followed, hands still shaking. I don't want money, she added quickly. I'm not here to ask for help. I wanted you to know I'm changing. Slowly. And I hope someday you can look at me and not just see my mistakes. He looked at her for a long moment, and in that second beneath the apron, the exhaustion, the regret, he saw a glimpse of the girl who used to paint her nails with Eleanor's polish and climb into his lap with drawings of crooked houses. Me too, he said. She smiled then, small, real. They didn't talk much more. A customer waved from the counter. Amelia excused herself to pour another cup of coffee. When she returned, Richard stood. What time do you get off work? He asked. 5. Okay. He reached into his jacket pocket and placed a folded piece of paper on the table. There's a place down the street that still does decent meatloaf, if you want to. She nodded before he finished. I'd like that. They walked side by side as dusk settled. No grand reconciliation, no dramatic hug. Just two people bound by blood and mistakes, choosing deliberately to share one quiet evening. Amelia talked about her shifts, her co-workers, how she learned to drink black coffee. Richard listened, and when she grew quiet, he didn't rush to fill the space. They passed a bookstore, then a bar with a jazz trio playing near the window. The music floated out into the street, brushed against their silence like an old friend. At the restaurant, they didn't toast. They didn't order wine. They shared a slice of apple pie and remembered that Eleanor used to complain about how no one made crust the right way anymore. Before they parted, Richard pulled an envelope from his coat, Amelia's letter, folded neatly. I'm keeping this, he said. Not because I forget, but because I remember, and I choose to move forward anyway. How they said, Alfred Maestas. Her eyes filled. She said nothing, just nodded, pressing her lips tight to hold it all in. Later, at home, Richard stood in his workshop. The place smelled of linseed oil and sawdust, the scent of honest work. He turned on the lamp and opened the drawer. Inside, a half-finished box. Cherry wood. Smooth sides. A lid he hadn't carved yet. He touched the grain. Then, carefully, as if it were a photo or a relic, he placed Amelia's letter inside and closed it, not as a goodbye, but as a beginning.